Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's technique is a little bit different, but I think it's kind of fun. I am using the Winter Song Stamps and Dies. I'm also using the Silent Night background stamp. And what else did I use? The vintage layering frames and the winter greenery, I think. Oh, and the sleigh bells, Lovely Layer sleigh bells. So I actually saw this. I was kind of on the hunt for like something different that I've always done. I know that these types of like more detailed images can be very overwhelming to people. And so I ended up coming across this video that is the Serene Stamper. I will link her video below. And I thought this technique was so much fun, something different. I definitely took mine more of a kind of like a vintage feel. But I think that there's a lot of different ways that you could adapt this. So this is just Neenah 80 pounds Desert Storm. And so I'm stamping. I chose brown ink. This is Cup of Joe from Hero Art, but you can use any waterproof ink. And then once you stamp it in your stamp positioner, you want to leave it in there so that it lines up exactly the same place. And you can see this has a bunch of beautiful detail. We are going to paint our image with a little bit of white acrylic paint. So there's a couple of different options. You can use I'm just use the Apple Barrel glossy white acrylic paint. And you could also use this Liquitex acrylic gouache that is opaque as well. And then Hero Arts has like an opaque white acrylic spray that's already watered down a bit. You could probably use that too. I think you could do this with gouache as well, but I will do a little bit more experimenting beforehand. But anyway, I added a little bit of water, and then I chose some brushes that actually I bought for my kids. So they're not like great quality brushes. Eventually I am going to switch over to a number 2 round brush from the Silver Brush Company. But basically we're just going to take this just slightly thinned out, so that way it's not like too thick and chunky and hard to spread, but not so much water. Like you can see, it's not bleeding out into my paper or anything like that. And so I played around with a couple of different brushes. I started with a number 6 round, and that seemed like a little bit too hard for me to control. So then I switched over to a number 2 flat. And I did a lot of the painting with this, not all the way out to the edges, but this is definitely a good brush for filling in larger areas. And then for the outline, I have a liner brush, and that's what I originally went in with, and it was just okay. The liner is when I switched to like an actual brush that I like to use. But so anyway, you want to make sure that you're working in thin layers. You can see that I'm kind of going back over and working to make sure that the lines of the paint are as smooth as possible, that I don't have a lot of lines built up that are overlapping, because however textured our paint is how textured the final result is going to be. And I wanted that to be as smooth as possible so that I could retain the most detail. I found this to be very relaxing, honestly, because it was just, filling in kind of the whole piece. And so, around the edges, I had to be a little bit more aware, but really for the most part, I was just, putting paint down and just filling it in. And it didn't take me too long. It really didn't take too long at all. So once we work all the way out, I did want to leave the whole thing in just so that you guys could see it. My paint is, like I said, it's a gloss, which I think is kind of fun, but you could also do a matte so that you wouldn't have any of the shine. But then like these little leaves and stuff, they look like mistletoe to me. But so those ones, I did fill them in. I think I painted over the branches and things because this was the first time that I was doing it. But truly, I don't think you would need to do all the branches. I think if you just painted the leaves, that would be sufficient, because the branches are just going to stamp brown again anyway, so it's not really necessary. But that was kind of just something like I was learning as I was going. So then once we have the first layer down, then we're going to go in and do a second layer. Here's where I'm going to bring in that other liner brush. And I didn't worry about like the thickness of the second coat on the edges, because honestly, when I'm putting it down on like the little pine cone edges, you'll see when we get to that point, it is a little bit of a more opaque layer already. But so you want to let the first layer dry, and then you want to go in with a second layer so that we really cannot see any of the stamping that is behind. Here you can obviously see it, it's still semi-transparent, but especially once you get like once you get the first layer down and you've kind of got all of those edges defined, the second layer really didn't take very much time at all, truthfully. Just probably the most part was spent just making sure that I took my time to smooth out the paint, so that it was not like there were no ridges or texture or anything like that. Like acrylic is great for those types of things. In a different application for this particular technique, in order for it to be successful, we do want to make sure it is super smooth. And then here you can see going in with all of those, I think those are actually holly leaves, and just getting each one of those little, what are we, like little arches, little pointy, what are we calling those? Pointy parts. But like I said, once I had, it's almost like me painting my nails. Like my first layer of nail polish is I have to like take my time and really define my edges. And then the second layer, I'm just like slapping it on because I already know where my stop and start points are. So, this may look like it's a little bit finicky to begin with, but I really don't think, I don't think it was too finicky. And you guys know me, I'm not a person who likes like the little finicky bits. So once I do this one, then I'm going to go ahead and do the second one. This particular style of stamp, somebody had actually left me a comment on my own channel and asked me like, if red rubber was, like something that they thought that they were going to see more often, because for placement purposes, they are a little bit more challenging, which I totally understand. Back when red rubber was first a thing, there weren't dyes. Now there's dyes, so it's a little bit easier to use. So here, I'm going to let these dry, and I'm just going to set them aside, and I'm going to start to work on my background. Because I chose to go with more of a vintage feel, I originally started inking up my background with that same waterproof brown ink, and then I decided to switch it up and go in with the Distress ink, and then I spritzed it with water, blotted up some areas so that it stamped a little bit unevenly. So one of them, I'm going to stamp the full thing here, just, with the Silent Night, Holy Night at the top and the whole thing. Then I'm going to do some splatters with the brushed corduroy and the white acrylic paint. And then I'm going to move on to the second one. But anyway, so with red rubber stamps, I don't necessarily know that, certainly don't think they're going to cancel out photopolymer stamps, but the benefit to red rubber is they are substantially more detailed, which we're going to see here in just a second. So now our paint is completely dry. We're going to go back to that original kind of waterproof, ink, and we're going to ink up. Again, I chose to use brown, but you can use black or a different color. So I'm going to ink these up really well, and everything, mine didn't stay in exactly the same spot, and it's because the sticky mat stuck to my hand, but it's close enough that it wasn't a big deal and I didn't feel the need to redo it. So just know there is a little bit of wiggle room. So once I have those inked up, I'm going to press them down. I'm going to stamp them in the exact same spot right over that dry paint. And this gives such a cool look because it retains all of the detail of the stamp, but then we have that white image. So you could stamp this in like in brown on white cardstock and then heat emboss it to get kind of the same look with the texture, but the heat embossing is going to be raised and you kind of blur out some of the details. So I just thought this was really fun, and I do think that you could use it a bunch of different ways with like colors and things. So here for this one, I'm still using that same background, but this time I'm only using the music note part of it. I didn't ink up the title, and I'm just going to stamp this around. First generation stamping and then second generation stamping means that we don't re-ink it. So I just picked it up, stamped it back down again with whatever was left on there. And then we're even going to go third generation stamping because this is just creating that background for us. To have a little bit of extra like texture. And honestly, the way that the card design ended up coming together, like you're not going to see the entirety of the piece. Here, something to note, I just wanted to show you. For acrylic paint, if you have, like here, I just put it into a little cup. If you just let it dry, you don't even have to wash it down your drain or anything like that. Just let it dry and then you can peel it off and just throw it in the trash can. So here, if you wanted to do the pieces, like if you didn't have the dies and you wanted to do the splatter around them while keeping your images intact, you could put the stamp in place before you did your spatters. I didn't. It didn't bother me to spatter over top of them. And I did add in some ground espresso for a little bit of a darker kind of spatter. This isn't going to be for everybody, and that's totally fine. Skip that part if it's not for you. So I did, you do have to give these a minute to dry. Even when you're doing the stamping, you have to give those parts just a minute to dry because it's not like this. It's not like it is on paper. It can't absorb into it. It has to dry on the surface. So it does take a little bit longer. So now I am cutting these out with their coordinating dies. I'm also cutting out some branches from, what did I say? Lovely Layers Greenery and the Lovely Layers Sleigh Bell. And then in addition to that, I am cutting a few of these vintage layering guides, vintage layering frames. And I'm going to use those. I cut them out of a dark brown, a white, and that same like Desert Storm, what are we? Like the inked version background that we created. The sentiments are both from the same set. This set was actually inspired by the set that Honeybee did for Stamptember. So if you have that, this would be you could use this technique for those as well. But I just thought it was something fun, something different. It's a really easy way to create a monochromatic card. And to use those more, intricate coloring stamps that are so beautiful, but maybe we don't always have time to color them. So here I'm going old school and doing some distressing. If you have a Tim Holtz distressor, like a paper distressor, that would work. Here I'm just using the side of my scissors and I am rubbing it right along the length of the paper. That's going to rough up the edge. It's going to create the texture, but then it's also going to create a really great surface for absorbing ink. So this was trimmed down, by the way, from what we stamped it before. And then I'm getting the paper pulp off of my desk. I'm going to add a little bit of inking with the brushed corduroy, not in all the places, just in some of them, kind of randomly, some corners and things like that, just to help give it that kind of aged look. And then, for this one, I wanted the bigger piece. So I have like the smaller pieces down there cut out of white and that dark brown, but I wanted the bigger piece as a frame. So I am just going to cut the frame that is around it off. And that way I have that bigger piece, and that is that piece that we did the distress stamping on. And then this will act as a kind of a base for everything else. I did the same thing here with the distressing and the inking on this piece for that. So you may notice that we have like some little snowy branches and stuff, and we're about to do a little snowy technique to the branches. Have you guys gotten snow yet this year? Here I am using the what is it, Grit Paste Snowfall from the Distress line from Ranger. And then I'm also using the Rock Candy Glitter. So I am just using a palette knife. I am putting that right onto the branches. In some of the areas, I'm leaving it like a little chunkier than others. And then I'm going to, some of them I dipped them in the rock candy. Some of them I poured it over top into my little craft catcher, which, by the way, somebody said to me, did we talk about this? I can't remember. Somebody was like, girl, flip it around so that it pours out of the funnel side. Yeah, I did not even think about that. I don't know why, but I did do it in this video and it does work lovely. So those corners, those little funnel corners work lovely to just dump things back out. Anyway, the snow, yeah, so they were calling for our first snowfall, and I live in Cleveland, so we get lake effect snow, which actually is not that common, even though I've grown up, like, hearing about it my whole life. Apparently, it's not that common out in the world, lake effect snow. And so they were like, yep, we're going to get some, snow. We're going to get our first snowfall. And sometimes, the weather people, they don't always know what they're talking about. They were talking about like 12 inches. And I was like, that's crazy for our first snowfall. And my husband and my sister were both like, that we're not going to get that, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Listen to me when I tell you it has been snowing for 2 days straight. And it definitely is sticking. And the reason why this is so wild, because you're like, Kelly, why would that be weird? You live in a cold northern state. Why would you be surprised by snow? I would be surprised by snow because my geraniums are still in full bloom. I have scarlet geraniums. My gram would love them with all that bright red in my planters on my porch still that are in full bloom that now have snow on them. Yeah, the weather just took a turn. So today, when I went to go pick up little Jelly Bean from daycare, it was a whopping 27 outside, and it was a full-on snowfall. The dogs came in white, which is better than mud. Don't get me wrong. You won't hear me complain about that. But yeah, totally wild how fast it flipped into like we're full-blown winter weather. I don't even know if technically we've started winter in the calendar year or not. Or if we're still in fall. But I do know that I was not prepared mentally for cleaning off my car and everything else, having to go pick her up. So yeah, a little bit crazy. I'd be interested to know if you've gotten your first snowfall yet. So here, I've kind of layered them offset, and you might be wondering, like, Kelly, why did you even bother to put in that layering frame on the bottom? You can barely see it because it has a pattern on the outside edge. It has like a pattern embossed into it, and I liked that very much. It was like another added layer, so that is why I chose to include it. And then I adhere them, like I said, a little cattywampus. And now we're going to build up our glittery, snowy branches behind our little birds. I think this is super fun. And I think this is like a really easy way to do something a little bit different with your outline stamps. You guys know that I'm a colorist, that I love a color. But I do understand that sometimes you aren't a colorist, or sometimes you don't have time to be the colorist that you want to be. That one I definitely get more than you probably really know. So here I have put those down, and now I am popping up my birds on foam, and I'm going to adhere them down. Our white embossed sentiments on that brown. I chose Winter Blessings and Season's Greetings. And so you could do these for Christmas, or you could just do them as winter cards. You could definitely, just put a like a happy birthday sentiment on there for like a winter birthday or a thinking of you. For the other one, this one is a little, it's still vintage vibes, but it's a little bit cleaner, which is probably a little closer to my traditional style. Also, I'm cheap and I'm reusing that brown paper, or that brown cardstock. So I have a little bit of a brown outline, and then I'm going to stack these guys up there. For the actual floral piece, I am going to pop that up on foam, just like I did with the previous one. And I'm going to tuck in, this time, not just branches behind it to the top, but I'm going to do it more of like a diagonal, kind of to like the top right and bottom left. And then I will put my sentiment into the top right. Why? Mostly because I always put my sentiment in the bottom left or bottom right, and I was trying to do something different. Sometimes, sometimes even you recognize when you're stuck in your own patterns. So this weekend was good. It was very busy. We did have Jelly Bean's birthday. That will be a story for another video, probably her birthday card video, honestly. But otherwise, we've been doing good. I just driving in the snow, I don't like it. And then my husband comes home and he's like, if you can't drive in the snow, don't drive in the snow. And I was like, some of us have to pick up our children. So I added a couple of gold pearls to accent my sentiments, and then that's it for both of these cards. So I hope you enjoyed this technique. Like I said, I'll link the original one below if you'd like to check it out. Thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I always appreciate it, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.